In the late afternoon glow of a quiet city park, a young nanny named Clara sat on an old wooden bench, gently rocking a stroller. The air was filled with the laughter of children running through the tall grass, their voices mixing with the sound of distant car horns and the rustle of leaves. Clara loved this time of day. It felt like the world slowed down, just enough for her to breathe after long hours of work. She was not rich, but her heart carried a warmth that made every child she cared for feel safe. That day had been peaceful until a sudden cry broke through the calm. Clara looked up quickly and saw a small girl at the far side of the park near the fountain. The child was standing alone, trembling and clutching a small stuffed bear. Her face was pale, and her eyes were wide with fear. Without a second thought, Clara stood and ran toward her. Her shoes kicked up tiny clouds of dust as she hurried over. When she reached the little girl, Clara saw tears rolling down her soft cheeks. The girl's voice shook as she said she had lost her father. Clara knelt beside her and spoke in a gentle voice that sounded like comfort itself. She told her everything would be all right and offered her hand. The girl hesitated for a moment but took it, holding tight as if she had found an anchor in the storm. Clara guided her to the bench and sat down beside her. She learned that the child's name was Lily. She had gotten separated from her father when chasing a red balloon that drifted away. The balloon was long gone now, just a tiny memory floating somewhere above the city. Clara pulled a handkerchief from her bag and wiped Lily's tears. Then she took out a small bottle of juice she always carried, pressing it into Lily's hands. As Lily sipped slowly, Clara talked about simple things, trying to distract her mind from fear. She pointed out the ducks near the pond and the way the light danced on the water. Lily listened, her breathing beginning to calm. Clara told her a short story about a little bird who got lost but found his way back home because someone kind had stopped to help. It made Lily smile weakly, and that was enough for Clara's heart to soften even more. Nearby, a few people noticed the scene, though none knew how deeply it would change more than one life that day. What Clara did not realize was that Lily's father was no ordinary man. His name was Ethan Carter, a successful business leader known for his brilliance and his walls of emotional distance. He had built an empire of glass towers and golden offices, but had lost the warmth in his home long before his wife's passing 2 years earlier. His world ran on schedules, deals, and phone calls. Love had become something too fragile to trust. Now his daughter was missing, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt something stronger than business pressure. He was desperate. His heart pounded as he ran through the park, calling Lily's name again and again. His sharp voice echoed off the trees, but fear softened it at every shout. He looked nothing like the calm man who appeared on magazine covers. His suit was dusty, his cuff torn, his polished shoes scuffed from sprinting over uneven paths. Clara noticed him from afar as he rushed between benches, searching wildly. She stood, waved her arm, and called out to him. When he turned and saw Lily sitting safe beside the nanny, relief swept across his face like a wave breaking over a rock. He ran to them and dropped to his knees, wrapping Lily in his arms with such force that Clara had to step back. For a moment, silence held everything still. Then Lily whispered to her father that Clara had helped her, and Ethan looked up to thank the young woman who had stayed. His words were simple, almost awkward, but his eyes carried deep gratitude. Clara smiled and said she was only glad the little girl was safe. After a short pause, Ethan asked if Clara would allow him to repay her kindness, but she shook her head, saying good deeds should not come with debts. Ethan watched as she turned to leave, her figure small against the golden light of evening. Something about her calm voice and unforced goodness stayed with him. She had appeared in his life as a stranger holding his child's hand, but her presence had touched a part of him he thought no longer existed. What neither of them knew was that this meeting, born from fear and kindness, would mark the beginning of something rare, a connection not bound by wealth or status, but by the invisible thread of the soul, quietly tying two hearts to one path neither had ever expected to walk. The following week passed quietly for Clara. She went back to her daily work, caring for a little boy named Noah, whose parents worked long hours. Her days followed a careful rhythm between meals, naps, park trips, and bedtime stories. Yet somewhere in her mind, the memory of the frightened little girl stayed, Lily's small hand gripping hers, her soft voice calling for her father. The warm evening light around them, all of it played again in her thoughts. Clara often wondered if Lily had forgotten about her, though she hoped the girl was happy again in her father's arms. Across the city, in a tall glass building that touched the clouds, Ethan Carter sat behind his large desk. The windows stretched high above the streets, giving him a view of busy roads and moving cars. People described him as strong and confident, though lately he felt the weight of emptiness resting on his shoulders. His mind kept returning to the nanny in the park. He remembered her calm manner and her gentle words to Lily. It had not left his thoughts since that day. He had asked his assistant to find the woman who helped his daughter. Not to repay her with money, but because something about her had touched the cold corners of his heart. One sunny afternoon, Clara returned to the same park with Noah. She sat on the bench while he played with other children. She enjoyed the faint hum of life around her. Then she saw a familiar shape near the fountain. It was Lily, skipping along beside a tall man in a dark suit. Her heart lifted before she could stop it. Lily noticed her too and ran straight toward her, calling her name. Clara stood up, surprised and delighted as the little girl wrapped her arms around her. Lily smiled and said she had been talking about Clara all week. Behind her, Ethan walked closer, slowing as his eyes met Clara's. He offered a quiet greeting and a thank you once again. His voice was lower this time, less formal, as though he finally spoke from his heart rather than business habit. He explained that Lily had insisted they return to the park in hopes of meeting Clara again. Clara laughed softly. She told Lily she was happy to see her smiling, and then she turned to Ethan. He looked different now, not just in his expensive clothes, but in his expression. His eyes seemed gentler and his smile carried warmth. He asked if they could all sit for a while, and Clara agreed. Lily perched between them, playing with her bear and chatting about every little thought that crossed her mind. They talked easily. Ethan asked Clara about her work, and she told him about the families she helped and her dream of studying early childhood education one day. He listened carefully, impressed by how much care she put into her words. There was a steady honesty in her tone, something his world rarely showed him. Most people around him spoke in calculations, but here was someone who spoke in truth and kindness. As they talked, the sunlight faded, throwing long shadows over the playground. Lily leaned against her father, fighting sleep. Clara said she should return home, but Ethan offered to walk her to the bus stop. She hesitated at first, then accepted, holding Lily's hand as they crossed the park together. At the stop, Ethan thanked her again and said he hoped she would allow him to invite her to dinner as a gesture of appreciation. She smiled and replied that a simple thank you was enough. Yet his persistence, though polite, showed he truly wished to see her again. He said he wanted Lily to spend more time with her. Something inside Clara hesitated because her position as a nanny did not easily mix with the world of wealthy businessmen. But her heart softened when she saw the child's bright eyes hopeful for another meeting. She agreed to visit them sometime soon. As the bus approached, Ethan reached into his coat and handed her a small card with his phone number. Clara tucked it into her worn bag, unsure if she would ever call. But when she looked at him one last time, she saw no arrogance or pride in his face, only calm gratitude. That night, Clara lay awake thinking about the unexpected turn her life had taken. She could not put words to the feeling, but it was a mix of wonder and worry. People like Ethan Carter rarely crossed paths with someone like her. She lived in a small apartment, where the walls carried the scent of old paint, and he lived in a world of glass and marble. Yet the memory of his kind eyes made her heart beat faster. Meanwhile, Ethan stood at the large window of his home, holding Lily as she drifted to sleep. His thoughts wandered to the woman who had reached out to a crying child without expecting anything in return. He realized that in meeting Clara, he had found something more valuable than all his successes. The world outside his window sparkled, but none of its lights compared to the quiet glow she had brought into his life. A few days later, Clara was walking home from the market with a small bag of groceries. The air smelled of rain, and the city lights shimmered on the wet pavement. Her phone rang softly in her pocket. When she answered, she heard a familiar voice. It was Ethan. He spoke kindly and asked if she had time that weekend to visit him and Lily. His tone was gentle and polite, though it carried a trace of nervousness that made her smile. After a short pause, she said yes. The day of the visit arrived, bright and clear. Clara wore her neat blue dress and tied her hair back in a simple ribbon. She packed a small basket with handmade cookies and a red toy plane for Lily. As the taxi pulled up in front of a wide white house with climbing vines, Clara felt her heartbeat quicken. The mansion stood tall and calm, surrounded by a large garden where flowers bloomed in every color.
Oh.
She took a deep breath before walking through the gate.
Oh.
Ethan met her at the door, wearing a soft expression far from his usual business formality. He greeted her warmly and led her inside. The living room was full of art, but what caught her eye most was Lily sitting on the floor building towers from colorful blocks. When she saw Clara, she squealed with joy and ran straight into her arms. The sound of her laughter filled the large, quiet house and brought a lightness Ethan had not felt in years. They spent the morning together in the garden. Clara showed Lily how to fold paper boats and sail them on a small pond. Ethan watched from a short distance, listening to the gentle sound of their voices mixing with the wind. He found himself putting his phone away, something he rarely did even on weekends. He picked up a small net and joined them, trying to catch the boats before they floated too far. His clumsy effort made Lily laugh so hard that Clara could not help but laugh too. When they went back inside for lunch, Clara helped the family cook prepare the table. She moved around the kitchen with natural ease. Ethan noticed how she spoke with kindness to everyone, thanking the staff and smiling often. She reminded him of someone who carried peace wherever she went. During lunch, they talked about childhood memories. Ethan shared small stories about Lily's late mother, and Clara listened with quiet respect. It was the first time in a long while that he spoke about her without closing his heart. After lunch, Lily took Clara by the hand and led her upstairs to show her room. The walls were covered with drawings full of bright colors and short messages written in a child's hand. Clara admired them and promised to bring new paints next time. Ethan stood by the doorway watching them, and something stirred deep within him. He realized how empty the house had felt before this day. Later, Clara and Ethan sat in the garden again while Lily napped on the swing chair. The afternoon sun spilled golden light over everything. They spoke softly about life and dreams. Clara told him about her wish to open a small daycare for children who needed extra care. She said she wanted to create a place filled with patience and love. Ethan listened, and then quietly said he hoped she would not give up on that dream. He told her he admired her courage because she worked hard without expecting much in return. They fell silent for a short while, both lost in thought. Clara looked at him and saw not only the powerful businessman everyone admired, but a kind man who had learned pain and yet still cared deeply. He did not hide behind pride when he was around her. For the first time, she felt completely at ease, as if they had known each other for much longer than a few weeks. Before she left, Ethan thanked her again for coming and said Lily had not stopped smiling all day. He walked her to the gate and hesitated for a moment before speaking. He told her that he had felt something rare that day, a sense of calm he could not explain. Clara met his eyes and answered honestly that she felt the same. She waved goodbye and stepped into the taxi, carrying a soft joy inside her chest. That night, the city lights flickered like stars. Clara sat by her small window, eating a cookie left from the basket. She thought about Ethan and Lily and the way the house had seemed alive with their laughter. She did not know what the future would bring, but she sensed their paths were now tied in ways beyond reason. At the same time, in his grand home, Ethan stood by Lily's bed and watched her sleep with her bear in her arms. He whispered that he had met someone special, someone who reminded him what kindness truly looked like. The house around him no longer felt cold. He realized that the woman who had rushed to comfort his frightened child in the park had unknowingly begun to heal his heart. The morning sun touched the windows of Clara's small apartment as she prepared for work. Although her life looked the same on the outside, her heart felt lighter these days. She found herself smiling without reason and humming while making breakfast. Each time her phone buzzed, she wondered if another message from Ethan might appear. Their friendship had grown quietly since her visit to his home. They talked often, sometimes about work, sometimes about simple things like favorite books or Lily's new drawings. It was not romance yet, but something steady was taking root. One afternoon, Clara received an unexpected call from Ethan's office. His assistant politely asked if she could come to his company building during lunch. Clara felt nervous but agreed, curious about what he wanted. When she arrived, she was led through polished halls filled with the sound of quiet footsteps and distant phones. The view from the high windows filled her with wonder. It was a world she had never stepped into before. Ethan greeted her at the door of his office wearing a warm smile that eased her worry. He offered her coffee and thanked her for coming. Then he told her he had been thinking about what she said regarding starting a daycare. He explained that he owned an unused property near the park, a small building that could be perfect for her dream. At first, Clara was silent, unsure what to say. The thought of such an offer felt far beyond anything she had imagined. Ethan told her it was not a gift, but a chance for partnership. He wanted to help her start the daycare together. He said she could run it in her own way, and he would handle the business side she disliked. Clara looked at him, trying to read his face. His eyes showed only honesty and respect. Still, she hesitated, worried that accepting would make her seem dependent or ungrateful. She told him she needed time to think. He nodded, understanding her concern. They talked about Lily for a while to lighten the mood. Ethan showed her new pictures Lily had drawn, and Clara laughed softly at the bright colors. He said that his daughter had not stopped talking about the day Clara visited. Hearing that made Clara's heart swell with affection for the little girl. When Clara left the building, the afternoon wind brushed her face. She walked through the city thinking of Ethan's words. His trust in her meant more than any offer of money. It also frightened her a little because she was beginning to care for him in ways that reached beyond the kindness of friends. That night she could not sleep. She lay awake listening to the rain and wondering why her heart beat faster whenever she thought of him. The next weekend she visited Ethan and Lily again. They spent the day baking cookies together, with flour covering nearly every surface. Lily giggled as she shaped the dough into crooked stars. Ethan stood behind Clara, trying to follow her instructions, though he managed to drop sugar on the floor. They laughed until tears ran down their cheeks. The air was full of warmth and something unspoken. Later that evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Ethan and Clara sat in the living room. The only light came from a small lamp beside the couch. He looked at her quietly, then thanked her again not only for helping his daughter, but for changing the house itself. He said it felt like a home again. Clara's eyes softened. She told him that Lily had changed her too, that spending time with both of them had filled her life with joy. Ethan hesitated for a short moment, and then said he had grown to admire her deeply. His words hung in the air like delicate glass. Clara felt her breath catch. She had sensed his feelings, but hearing them aloud made her heart race. She told him she had also grown to care about him, but did not know what their future could be. Their worlds were so different. Ethan replied that differences mattered little when hearts understood each other. He did not ask for promises, only for the chance to keep knowing her. Clara smiled and nodded. The moment was quiet and full of meaning. A soft peace settled between them that no words could break. When Clara returned home that night, the stars were clear after days of rain. She stood by her window, holding the memory of his gentle tone. Her life as a poor nanny had never been easy. Yet now, she felt she had found something rare. Not comfort in wealth, but comfort in connection. Across the city, Ethan stood by the balcony, with Lily's laughter echoing faintly from upstairs. For the first time in years, his heart felt alive. He realized he did not need to escape into work anymore. Everything he had ever built seemed empty compared to the simple grace of that woman who walked into his life because a child had once been afraid in a park. Several months passed, and the small building near the park slowly began to change. Its faded yellow walls were freshly painted, and the garden at the front was filled with bright flowers that Lily helped plant herself. A new wooden sign hung above the doorway with cheerful letters that read "Little Steps Daycare." It was Clara's dream brought to life. The dream Ethan had helped her start. Clara worked hard every day, organizing toys, arranging tiny chairs, and building a safe place where children could laugh and learn. The room smelled of paint, crayons, and new beginnings. Parents who visited felt peace the moment they walked in because Clara treated every child with love. She was gentle but strong, patient, and full of warmth. Ethan watched proudly as her dream took shape. He visited often, sometimes bringing Lily to play, sometimes bringing coffee and lunch for Clara. Though she teased him for being too serious with spreadsheets and schedules, he always reminded her that every successful dream needed good planning. Whenever they stood together watching children play, it felt like time paused for them both. It was as though their lives had found a rhythm that matched perfectly. Lily had become the happiest she had ever been. Her laughter filled both the daycare and her home. At night, she often told her father stories about Clara, about how she taught the children songs, how she told kind tales before nap time, and how she always noticed when someone was sad. Ethan listened to his daughter talk and felt a deep gratitude that went beyond words. One Friday evening, after all the children had gone home, Clara and Ethan stayed behind to clean up toys scattered across the floor. The sky outside turned soft orange, and the smell of rain carried through the open window. Clara looked around the quiet room and said it already felt full of life, even when empty. Ethan agreed and told her she had built something beautiful out of kindness and courage. She smiled at him, touched that he believed in her even when she doubted herself. As they stood there, silence grew between them. It was not uncomfortable, but filled with meaning. Ethan stepped closer and thanked her for showing him what truly mattered. He told her that before she came into his life, his days had been full but colorless. Everything had been about numbers and success, and no amount of money could fill the emptiness he carried. He said she had taught him that love was not a weakness, but a strength. Clara's eyes filled with quiet emotion. She told him that he had given her more than he could ever know. His faith in her had turned her small dream into reality. She could still hardly believe she now ran her own daycare. Her voice trembled slightly as she said she had once believed her life would always remain simple. But meeting him and Lily had changed everything. There was a pause, and then Ethan gently took her hand. The gesture was calm and full of trust. He said he wanted to build a life where they could face things together, not as the rich man and the poor nanny, but as two people who had found comfort in each other. Clara hesitated for a second, her heart swelling with feeling. Then she smiled and whispered that she wanted the same. Outside, a single streetlight flickered on, shining softly through the window. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. It was as though the world outside had grown quiet to give them their own small piece of peace. The following months were filled with both work and happiness. The daycare flourished, more families came, and the sound of children's laughter grew louder every day. Ethan helped with development plans, while Clara taught the children songs about dreams and kindness. Lily often ran between them, her joy tying them together like a bright ribbon. Their lives blended naturally, one day flowing into the next with warmth. One summer morning, the three of them stood together in the garden outside the daycare. The flowers were in full bloom, and the scent of lavender filled the air. Lily handed a bunch of wildflowers to Clara and said she wanted them to stay together always. Ethan looked at Clara and nodded softly, knowing exactly what his daughter meant. Clara knelt to hug Lily tightly, her heart full to the brim. They stayed there for a while, enjoying the sunlight, the laughter, and the slow rhythm of calm that wrapped around them. Clara glanced at Ethan and felt a quiet certainty in her soul. Life had not given her wealth, but it had given her something far greater. She had found love where she least expected it. She had found purpose born from kindness. She had found a man whose heart learned how to care again. As they stood in that small garden surrounded by joy and simplicity, she knew they were no longer just people whose lives had crossed by chance. They were a family shaped by love's gentle power, kind that begins with one small act of comfort in a park and grows strong enough to last forever.